We've been together for 9 months now. We met at work. I had been divorced from my ex-wife for over a year, and she too was divorced from her ex-husband for a bit longer. I knew I wanted to ask Steph out from the first day we met. Captivating smile, beautiful green eyes, a sharp sense of wit, and a slim but sensuous body to die for. I got up the nerve to ask her out after a week at my new job. I was the new nurse manager at a nursing home, and she was the business office manager. We were both mature adults, she being in her mid-30s and me being 45. Simple first date, a walk in a local park, just getting to know the basics about each other, you know? We hit it off immediately, and that little walk in the park turned into a 3-hour session of let's learn everything about each other. I gave my basically non-eventful story of my life, nurse for 20 years, married 16 years, 2 kids in their teens, and the divorce. Her story was much more interesting. It started off normal enough. Married for about 15 years, marriage grew stale and ended in divorce. Then it got interesting, especially from my being a nurse. She was diagnosed with a rare brain tumor at age 21 and miraculously survived after 2 major brain surgeries and an unexpected stroke. I didn't pay much mind to what she said next at the time, but as you'll find out, I should have. We stopped our walk in the park and she turned to face me. She put both hands on my arms and looked me dead in the eyes. Just so you know, I can't take medicine, okay? Any type of medicine. I react weird to medicines ever since the brain surgery. Being a seasoned nurse, I've heard similar statements before and pretty much brushed it off as just another person who is afraid to take medicine because of fear of side effects. No biggie. Fast forward a few weeks, we had spent a few nights together and I noticed each time that she didn't sleep well, at all. Waking up 5 and 6 times a night, maybe getting 3 to 4 hours of sleep at most. She was exhausted every day, but insisted she was used to it. One night, just before bed, I asked if she had ever taken Benadryl. She said no and asked me why. I told her it was an over-the-counter medicine for allergies, but it could also help her sleep. I told her that I remember she said she couldn't take medication, but this was over-the-counter and had the least chance of any type of adverse effect than any other sleep medicine. After showing her the bottle and a half an hour of coaxing, she finally agreed. Besides, I said, I'm a nurse. If even the smallest thing happens, I'm here with you and would know what to do. Within 30 minutes of taking 1 Benadryl, she was out like a light. I gave her a kiss on the forehead and whispered, "Finally, you'll get a good night's sleep, baby." Soon afterward, I drifted to sleep myself with my lady in my arms. Now we can both sleep, I thought. I awoke suddenly a few hours later. Steph wasn't beside me. I was worried something had happened to her. Did she fall? Hit her head against the wall or something? "Baby?" I called out. No response. I slowly made my way through the dark of the house and into the hallway. To my right was the den, to the left was the kitchen. I flipped on the kitchen light. Nothing. Then, I heard another noise about 10 feet behind me, one that made me freeze in my steps. At first, it was a low, deep growl, like a big fucking pit bull or other canine. Thing was, I have no pets, and I live out in the country, so no dog. My mind was trying to picture what the hell could be growling. I slowly turned towards the noise. No sudden movements. I saw the outline of Steph. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, head down. She appeared to be facing towards the door leading outside. I took 3 more quiet steps towards the den and reached the lamp. I turned it on and the faint light illuminated Steph's form. It was Steph all right. Naked, head down, and as I first thought, facing the door. No more growling, but a new sound, like a chewing sound. I leaned and reached forward, just far enough so I can gently touch her shoulder. "Baby?" I said in a whisper. In a flash, she turned her whole body to face me. What I saw will forever be etched into my memory. Her face was covered in blood from her mouth down, dripping from her chin. Her arms, the forearms, they were missing chunks of flesh. She had torn pieces of flesh off her forearms with her teeth. She looked dead in the eyes. They were almost completely black. No pupils could be seen. I stood up slowly, then again froze in place. What are you doing, baby? I managed to shakily stutter. In a guttural-sounding reply, she said,
"Can't take medicine."
Blood still dripping from her mouth. She made another low growl and started to crawl towards me. Then, out of nowhere, she collapsed, face down on the floor. I remained unable to make myself move for at least another minute, trying to process what just happened. Then, the nurse brain kicked in. She was bleeding profusely from her arms, blood pooling around her upper body. I quickly grabbed some towels and held pressure on her arms to stop the bleeding. I picked her up and moved her to the bed. I cleaned the wounds as she remained unconscious. I had stocked up on lots of medical supplies during my years of nursing, so I packed the wounds with gauze and wrapped them with more gauze. I couldn't take her to an emergency room. What the fuck would I say? It was a weekend, so we didn't have to be at work again until Monday. I'll take care of her, I said to myself. She remained completely out of it for the next 36 hours. I would check her vital signs periodically, and she was fine. I didn't close my eyes during those 36 hours. I couldn't. I watched as the blood that was soaking the bandages slowly reabsorbed somehow into her arms. At the 36th hour, I removed the bandages. I can't explain it to this day, but the wounds were gone, healed completely. I sat stunned in silence for what seemed like hours. Steph's eyes began to flutter open. She looked at me. Her beautiful green eyes stared at me and she smiled. "Good morning, baby," she said. I somehow was able to apparently do a decent job of faking normalcy. "Hey, baby," I responded. "It seems like I slept for days. Is it Sunday already?" "Yes, it is, baby," I said, again trying to sound like nothing was wrong. "Time flies when you're having fun." It's been 6 months since that day. I never said a word. She is completely fine, sweet, beautiful, and wonderful. Yeah, I've stayed with her. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. She just can't take medicine, that's all. You can't escape a posy straitjacket. That is to say, you can't escape a properly applied posy straitjacket. There are two main styles of straitjackets used in the United States. The humane restraints straitjacket, which is much less secure and normally intended to be used in conjunction with sedation, and of course, the posy straitjacket. Now, in the private world, there are also many fashion brands of straitjackets, many fetish-style straitjackets, and many magic styles of straitjackets. There has never been a recorded escape from a properly applied posy straitjacket, and we should hope not, because of the dangerous people whom they are designed to contain. A posy brand straitjacket is made from very thick, very heavy canvas, and has 6 steel friction-activated buckles. There is a wide neck opening at the top for safety. When the back of the straitjacket is open, there are 4 buckles on one side, and there are 4 straps on the other side. The intended occupant is sedated or given a muscle relaxant because it is very difficult to place a fully awake and aware person into a straitjacket against their will, due to the complexity of the ritual of restraints. First, start with the back of the straitjacket open. The arms will be placed into the sleeves and the straitjacket is pulled up into place. Start at the top and work your way to the bottom buckle. Each buckle is to secure the straitjacket very snug, but not with cruelty, down the back of the straitjacket, and with each buckle, freedom will slip away. The muscle relaxer also prevents cramping in the arms during prolonged periods in restraints. These buckles are friction operated to allow for a quick release in case of safety complications, but the buckles are completely inert to struggle because the slack of the strap is laced through the buckle a second time, preventing any chance of escape. At the front of the posy straitjacket, there is a loop for the arms to be passed through when crossed. A loop is placed on each side for the ends of the sleeves to be laced through as well. These loops serve many functions. Not only do they prevent the arms from being lifted, but they also make a convenient control handle. Once the arms are laced into the loops properly, the buckle at the end of the sleeve is laced onto the strap at the end of the other sleeve. The sleeves are snugged up and the strap is then laced back into the rear of the buckle in order to lock the strap off in the back of the posy straitjacket. The sleeve strap should not be applied so tight as to cause difficulty breathing. Finally, there's a strap that fits between the legs from the front to the back, and of course another weighting buckle attached to the bottom rear of the straitjacket. The crotch strap should be applied securely but not with cruelty to the occupant's genitalia. The loops also have the byproduct of transferring the struggles of the arms and thrashing of the torso into the crotch strap, which with friction and pressure can create an erotic response. Of course, straitjackets naturally had wide use in the treatment of hysteria in women. In private usage, the crotch strap is often used by deviants to retain sexual objects and/or devices inside their partner's cavities. The science behind the posy straitjacket is simple. The straitjacket distributes force over such a wide area of body, and when properly applied with no slack, a person inside of the straitjacket cannot gain bodily momentum in their struggles. This makes it all but impossible to rip the fabric, and also makes it difficult to inflict personal injury. It renders a person helpless to resist their treatments, and makes it all but impossible to loosen the friction buckles with struggle. Once a heavy canvas posy straitjacket is applied properly, exit can only be accomplished with aid from an outside source. Also, obviously magicians also used fake straitjackets, but some do use real straitjackets. There is of course the magician's myth of shoulder dislocation. That is simple to explain away because magicians are in fact professional liars, and thus almost never use real straitjackets during acts. The shoulder dislocation may have been possible in the humane restraints straitjacket, which has no security loops, and also was possible in the days of old. However, after being humiliated by Harry Houdini, the mental health system used an escapologist to perfect their restraints. If you did manage to dislocate your shoulders in a posy straitjacket, you would simply be in useless agony because the loops at the front and on each side would still foil the escape attempt. The tapered sleeves when a posy straitjacket is properly sized to its occupant makes it impossible for an arm to be drawn out far enough from the sleeve to be able to reach out of the neck hole of the straitjacket. This makes it impossible to reach the rear buckles or reach out the bottom of the straitjacket to unstrap the crotch strap, so the straitjacket can then be pulled over the head. Because the straitjacket is made from very heavy canvas, it absorbs sweat very readily and will become heavier and heavier, and if the straitjacket is tightened when it is already soaked with sweat, it will shrink as it dries. So never tighten a wet straitjacket. The posy straitjacket is very durable, and when properly applied is functionally inescapable. In recent years, the wide usage of the posy and humane restraints straitjackets have been very much banned and heavily restricted for obvious reasons, because it is a barbaric and dehumanizing device. However, it can still be prescribed in extreme cases for violent inmates and violent criminals in extremely special cases. Facility protocols should strongly advise staff members to do restraint and room checks in pairs for safety. Now, I know you are new here and most likely have not been properly trained just yet, and the facility is dreadfully understaffed. But now that the muscle relaxer is wearing off because I only gave you a little prick to make this easier after I took the syringe away from you, I would imagine at this point, now that you are learning firsthand how inescapable a properly applied posy straitjacket is, I am sure you wish your predecessor had secured the posy straitjacket properly the first time with the loops. I have been waiting quite a while for this mistake. Waiting for this chance. Such a pity for you that we wear the same size. We could be sisters, but that kind of makes this even more dirty. Or perhaps that makes this masochism, because you look just like me. You would have noticed that before if the other times you saw me, they hadn't had my face gagged in the muzzle you have on now. Your clothes will fit me as nicely as my straitjacket fits you. It's a touch too small on you, but I think I like it better that way. And it will get tighter as my sweat dries and the cotton shrinks. So it will get quite painful. But that pain is the least of your worries. I know it is difficult to breathe already. Such a pity our hair and eyes are the same color as well. As I said, we could be sisters. I wonder how long it will take before they realize you are telling the truth about not being me. Or if they will drive you mad first trying to cure me. Some really sick fuckers work here, you know? You will learn. But for now, I feel like playing night nurse. Struggle all you want, darling. I will enjoy it. And I know just how well these padded walls absorb pleading. I don't think you will be wearing the muzzle much longer, but it will go back on in due time. But those leather ankle hobbles are useful to keep you from kicking me. They work quite fantastic. You won't be needing these shoes anymore. They are my size after all. I think we should get to know each other a little better. And it is 3 hours until the next shift change for day shift. So I have plenty of time to enjoy myself before I need to be going with your keycard, badge, and those car keys. It is, after all, impossible for you to escape a properly applied posy straitjacket. Take it from me. I have had plenty of practice. Day 1. When it all began, I woke up and she was staring at me. Day 2. I held her hand. She said she couldn't sleep because she was always watching. Day 3. She slept with me. Day 4. I saw her talking to someone. I told myself it was her imaginary friend. She called her Samantha. Day 5. Something isn't right. She sleeps with me, but I hear her whispering every single night. Incoherent what she says, though sometimes when I listen close, I'm quite sure I hear another voice whispering back. Day 6. I awoke this morning. My daughter was gone. I scrambled up and looked around. I found her in the playroom, happy as can be. She turned and smiled at me, playing with her toys. Still, something felt very wrong. Day 7. I found her awake, just laying there, eyes wide open, never blinking, always smiling at me. Day 8. Something is very wrong. She keeps talking to someone. Sometimes she twitches a bit, no reasoning, seemingly something small. Still, I notice it. Day 9. I can hear them both talking late at night. I'm terrified. I hear them speaking about me. Something about when I'm sleeping. I was awake that night, never sleeping. She was too, never blinking, always smiling. Day 10. I recorded my daughter. She was in the playroom. I thought it would be okay. Then she asked about her dead father. She said she saw him. She never looked at me. However, she knew I was there. She says Samantha let me talk to him. Day 11. I've still not slept. I'm afraid to. I almost did today, but when I started to nod off, I had a terrible feeling, and when I opened my eyes, she was staring me in the face, never blinking, always smiling. Day 12. I collapsed. I had the most maddeningly frightening dreams. I saw Samantha. She just laughed at me. I awoke. There my daughter stood. The neighbor's dead cat still ripped open. Organs everywhere. She just kept smiling. Knife in one hand, the cat in the other. Never blinking. Day 13. I brought her to a child psychologist. The woman saw her for an hour. That night, I got a phone call. She said she's always watching, then laughed and cried. I heard her blow her brains out over the phone. My daughter Emily just stood there, smiling at me, never blinking. Day 14. I've asked for an exorcism. The priest Skyped me. He just smiled into the camera, saying she's always watching. He slit his throat right on camera. I don't know what to do. I can't do anything. Day 15. Emily seemed herself today. No weird changes. Nothing. Day 16. She asked me to play. Said something about having tea time set up in our basement. I politely declined. I told her I had something to do. She stared me in the face and said,
Mommy, Samantha says you are lying. You have nothing else to do. She also wants you to know she loves you.
Day 17. I walked inside Emily's room. She was taking pictures of a dead rat. She is only 7. Something is very wrong with that. Day 18. I collapsed again. I woke up. There she was, smiling, never blinking. Day 19. I think I'm seeing Samantha every now and again, from time to time. Out of the corner of my eye, she just smiles, never blinking. Day 20. I'm seeing her more frequently. She lurks closer every time. Some nights, I hear her whispering.
Everything is going to be fine.
Day 21. I thought about killing Emily today. I'm not sure I have a choice. She's my daughter. I love her. Samantha says, it will be all right. She whispered into my ear all night.
Everything is going to be fine.
Day 22. I made Emily breakfast today. I told her to join me for tea. In the basement, I made a special mallet just for the event. Samantha says I shouldn't tell Emily. Everything will be fine. I can kill her, then myself. Then we can be a happy family. Day 23. The tea party went great. It was such a delight. I killed Emily. I sawed off her head. Still more time for tea, though. Day 24. I looked inside the mirror today. I saw Samantha's face. Always smiling, never blinking. I'm going to take this knife, shove it in my neck. I did. I'm bleeding out. It's okay, though. Everything is going to be fine.
Everything is going to be fine.
Hello, Black-Eyed Blonde. You might not know me, but I know you. But don't worry, I'm going to tell you my name. My name is Christina, and I am your biggest fan. I was your very first subscriber. I was there from day one on your personal channel. I almost instantly fell in love with your voice and smile from your very first video. I was jealous of how beautiful your long blonde hair was, because mine is brown. I tried to dye it blonde, but failed and burnt my scalp. My eyes are bright fucking green. I hate it. Why can't I look and be more like you? Anyways, just wanted to say hi. Keep up the good work. Your biggest fan, Christina. I take it you might have not read my last message, but that's okay. I just wanted to let you know I got new contacts, so now at least my eyes can look just like yours. I went to show you today, but I got scared. Your neighbors were away because today is the 4th of July and obviously your birthday. You see, I wanted to surprise you for your birthday. I got you a gift. It's a Jared Leto toy, a 30 Seconds to Mars CD. It cost me nearly my whole check. I got to see them the same day you did, but as I went to get your attention, a boy, barely a man, stole a kiss from you, a kiss that should have been mine. So I went home and cried my eyes out. Maybe I'll send it by mail, since I have your address now. Love, Black-eyed Christina. Today you went live. I was more excited than normal because today wasn't a day you normally upload. I wanted to let you know, I tried once again to bleach my hair to look like yours, but I failed again. So I took my Zippo and burnt off all my hair, and took melted plastic and put it on my head, so I won't have to see that nasty brown ever again. I bought a blonde wig, so I can have hair just like yours. Now, we can be just like twins, only closer. I glued my wig to have it look naturally like yours. You don't know it yet, but you and I are destined to be together. I know you might not get this right away, since at the moment you're live. I am listening to you as I am writing this. Who the hell is Master Torch, and why is he the pioneer of your fan club? I was your first. I should be your one and only. Don't worry, I'll take care of him. No one can come between us. Not ever again. Truly yours, Black-eyed Blonde number 2, Christina. I took care of Master Torch. Don't worry. You see, finding him wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. He is my sister's brother-in-law. She showed me right where he lived, and this time didn't ask what I was up to. This time I did my homework. He had everything I needed and more. So much better than the last one. When I got to the place, I noticed all the cameras and an older man. I simply told him I was here to see my brother-in-law, and I used Master Torch's real name, and the older man let me in. It was that easy. Then he showed me which room was his. I picked his lock. It was super easy. I've gotten better over the years. Then I looked around and found his bottle of absinthe, which I know he drinks a glass every night. I poured in my ground-up sleeping meds to make sure he is knocked out. I then went to hide in his closet, and shortly after he got home, he drank it and went to sleep. I got up out of his closet and handcuffed him to the bedpost and shoved a sock in his mouth so no one will hear his cries for help. The last thing I did was crawl under his bed and pull out his nearly 7-foot knife. Picking it up without noise was harder than I thought, but once I had it picked up, putting it through his chest was a snap. He won't be the master of anything anymore. Don't worry, honey. I also took care of your boyfriend because today I realized that I sent you this knowing that I confessed everything. That's okay, because I am not going back to the crazy house. Not this time. I want you to know, as you're reading this aloud, like you do with everything, I am in your closet waiting for you. Because if I can't have you, no one will. Your one and only, Black-eyed Blonde. Let's get creepy. Every Halloween, it got worse. Trick-or-treaters wore meaningless plastic costumes or slapped on fake blood or just t-shirts that said costume. Harold gave them candy anyway, but the last Halloween had been the final straw. He just turned off the porch light when some kids showed up, not wearing costumes at all. They looked bored, not saying anything, just expecting free candy. Little assholes.
Here's some advice,
Harold said.
Next time, wear costumes, or at least say trick or treat.
He'd slam the door. He was sweating. His heart raced. He felt furious, but also unexpectedly afraid.
Who wouldn't be?
Thought Harold.
With that generation in charge of the future?
The next year, his wife handed out candy. She loved seeing the cute ones. Harold shut himself in his study, plotting against the costumeless trick-or-treaters. He could hear everything through his study door. The doorbell.
Trick or treat!
laughing. Repeat. The doorbell again.
Trick or treat! What adorable costumes!
Shrieked his wife. Get in here so I can see you in the light. More laughing. Then silence. Harold's heart pounded. Sweat trickled down his face. He heard the front door click shut.
Honey?
He yelled. A thump in the front entryway. The previous Halloween flashed through Harold's memory. For the first time, he saw every detail of those kids. Unremarkable clothes, bland faces, completely black eyes. Christ, how had he not noticed? Scratching outside his study door. Harold Googled black-eyed children and protocols for when you've accidentally invited them in. Nothing. Nobody ever let them in, it seemed. Nobody who'd lived to tell about it. Black-eyed children weren't clever enough to trick anyone into admitting them. At least, not until Harold told them how. Have you ever forgotten your phone? When did you realize you'd forgotten it? I'm guessing you didn't just smack your forehead and exclaim, "Damn," apropos of nothing. The realization probably didn't dawn on you spontaneously. More likely, you reached for your phone, pawing open your pocket or handbag, and were momentarily confused by it not being there. Then, you did a mental restep of the morning's events. Shit. In my case, my phone's alarm woke me as normal, but I realized that the battery was lower than I expected. It was a new phone, and it had this annoying habit of leaving applications running that drained the battery overnight. So, I put it onto charge while I showered instead of into my bag like normal. It was a momentary slip from the routine, but that was all it took. Once in the shower, my brain got back into the routine it follows every morning, and that was it. Forgotten. This wasn't just me being clumsy, as I later researched. This is a recognized brain function. Your brain doesn't work on one level, it works on many. Like when you're walking somewhere, you think about your destination and avoiding hazards, but you don't need to think about keeping your legs moving properly. If you did, the entire world would turn into one massive hilarious Q-Up cosplay. I wasn't thinking about regulating my breathing. I was thinking whether I should grab a coffee on the drive to work. I did. I wasn't thinking about moving my breakfast through my intestines. I was wondering whether I'd finish on time to pick up my daughter Emily from nursery after work, or get stuck with another late fee. This is the thing. There's a level of your brain that just deals with routine, so that the rest of the brain can think about other things. Think about it. Think about your last commute. What do you actually remember? Little, if anything, probably. Most common journeys blur into one, and recalling any one in particular is scientifically proven to be difficult. Do something often enough and it becomes routine. Keep doing it and it stops being processed by the thinking bit of the brain and gets regulated to a part of the brain dedicated to dealing with routine. Your brain keeps doing it without you thinking about it. Soon, you think about your route to work as much as you do keeping your legs moving when you walk. As in, not at all. Most people call it autopilot, but there's danger there. If you have a break in your routine, your ability to remember and account for the break is only as good as your ability to stop your brain from going into routine mode. My ability to remember my phone being on the counter is only as reliable as my ability to stop my brain entering morning routine mode, which would dictate that my phone is actually in my bag. But I didn't stop my brain entering routine mode. I got in the shower as normal, routine started, exception forgotten, autopilot engaged. My brain was back in the routine. I showered, I shaved. The radio forecast amazing weather. I gave Emily her breakfast and loaded her into the car. She was so adorable that morning. She complained about the bad sun in the morning blinding her, saying it stopped her having a little sleep on the way to nursery. And then I left. That was the routine. It didn't matter that my phone was on the counter charging silently. My brain was in the routine, and in the routine, my phone was in my bag. This is why I forgot my phone. Not clumsiness, not negligence, nothing more than my brain entering routine mode and overriding the exception. Autopilot engaged. I left for work. It's a sweltering hot day already. The bad sun had been burning since before my traitorously absent phone woke me. The steering wheel was burning hot to the touch when I sat down. I think I heard Emily shift over behind my driver's seat to get out of the glare. But I got to work, submitted the report, attended the morning meeting. It's not until I took a quick coffee break and reached for my phone that the illusion shattered. I did a mental restep. I remembered the dying battery. I remembered putting it on to charge. I remembered leaving it there. My phone was on the counter. Autopilot disengaged. Again, therein lies the danger. Until you have that moment, the moment you reach for your phone and shatter the illusion, that part of the brain is still in routine mode. It has no reason to question the facts of the routine. That's why it's a routine. Attrition of repetition. It's not as if anyone could say, "Why didn't you remember your phone? Did it occur to you? How could you forget? You must be negligent." That's to miss the point. My brain was telling me the routine was completed as normal, despite the fact that it wasn't. It wasn't that I forgot my phone. According to my brain, according to the routine, my phone was in my bag. Why would I think to question it? Why would I check? Why would I suddenly remember out of nowhere that my phone was on the counter? My brain was wired to the routine, and the routine was that my phone was in my bag. The day continued to bake. The morning haze gave way to the relentless fever heat of the afternoon. Tarmac bubbled. The direct beams of heat threatened to crack the pavement. People swapped coffees for iced smoothies. Jackets discarded, sleeves rolled up, ties loosened, brows mopped. The parks slowly filled with sunbathers and barbecues. Window frames threatened to warp. The thermometer continued to swell. Thank fuck the offices were air-conditioned. But as ever, the furnace of the day gave way to a cooler evening. Another day, another dollar. Still cursing myself for forgetting my phone, I drove home. The day's heat had baked to the inside of the car, releasing a horrible smell from somewhere. When I arrived on the driveway, the stones crunching comfortingly under my tires, my wife greeted me at the door. "Where is Emily?" Fuck. As if the phone wasn't bad enough. After everything, I'd left Emily at the fucking nursery after all. I immediately sped back to the nursery. I got to the door and started practicing my excuses, wondering vainly if I could charm my way out of a late fee. I saw a piece of paper stuck to the door. "Due to vandalism overnight, please use side door. Today only." Overnight? What? The door was fine this morning. I froze. My knees shook. Vandals. A change in the routine. My phone was on the counter. I hadn't been here this morning. My phone was on the counter. I'd driven past because I was drinking my coffee. I'd not dropped off Emily. My phone was on the counter. She'd moved her seat. I hadn't seen her in the mirror. My phone was on the counter. She'd fallen asleep out of the bad sun. She didn't speak when I drove past her nursery. My phone was on the counter. She'd changed the routine. My phone was on the counter. She changed the routine and I'd forgotten to drop her off. My phone was on the counter. 9 hours, that car, that baking sun, no air, no water, no power, no help, that heat. A steering wheel, too hot to touch. That smell. I walked to the car door, numb, shock. I opened the door. My phone was on the counter, and my daughter was dead. Autopilot disengaged. We'd been doing civics for the past month. I was teaching second grade at Witherspoon Elementary, struggling to teach the meaning of Gettysburg and the Battle of Princeton to a bunch of 8-year-olds, especially without giving a diatribe about the evils of slavery, and making them bring that shit home to their parents. One day, I was stuttering through a lesson on a states' rights speech by Jefferson Davis when suddenly Jimmy blurted out, "Mr. Johnson, you look like a banana." The other kids laughed their asses off, latching onto the joke immediately. "Yeah, a big, fat banana! A big, fat, stinky banana!" All right. I know my clothes are a little funny. I was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren button-down and some bright mustard khakis. Brown shoes, too. The stem, I guess. Just for today, you can call me Mr. Banana. The kids exploded after that. We didn't accomplish much for the rest of the day, but I wondered if this whole Mr. Banana business might actually be good for them. On the way home, I decided to buy some stuff from Green Street. A couple of yellow button-downs, some yellow ties, a few pairs of pants. I signed the receipt, Mr. Banana. The cashier didn't notice, but I chuckled as I walked out the door. Walking down Nassau, I had the sudden craving for banana bread, so I went to Wawa and bought some ingredients. Figured I would bake one for myself and one for the kids. When I got home, I mixed up the ingredients and put 2 loaves in the oven. Then I pulled up an old episode of Sesame Street on YouTube. I was thinking a lot about Yellow, I guess, but it had never occurred to me how magnetic Big Bird was, that lovable behemoth always brightening everyone's mood. There's this one episode where he goes to school for the first time, and he tries to take his desk home from the classroom because the teachers said it was his. I laughed thinking about having a giant bird in my classroom. Everything would probably go to shit. Anyway, once the banana bread was done, I sliced myself a big piece, squirting a little whipped cream on top. It was good, but tasted a little strange. Figured I would change up the recipe if I made another batch. The next day, I came into school in full yellow garb. A pineapple tie, some pastel pants, even an old pair of shoes that I spray-painted yellow. Once the kids sat down, we went through our daily salutation, with a slight twist. "Good morning, class!"
Good morning, Mr. Banana!
Every kid got a piece of banana bread wrapped in plastic. Between the gluten and walnuts and eggs, I probably would have been sued if a crumb fell on the floor. Somehow, we made some headway on the Civil War that day. I showed them segments from a documentary about Abraham Lincoln, and they actually sat still, fumbling the banana bread in their hands. I started getting emails from parents a few days later. "Mr. Johnson, Alice absolutely loves your class. She said you're the funniest teacher she's ever had. Keep up the good work. Mrs. Goldman." It was nice to get that approval, like I was actually doing something important. Hell, maybe these kids would even remember some of the stuff I taught them. So I started to go all out, bringing in yellow streamers to hang across the classroom, typing up the weekly newsletter with a banana-themed border, taking showers with L'Oreal Banana Blast shampoo. I spent hours on Google just so I can do a banana fact of the day for the kids. Turns out the scientific name for banana is Musa sapientum, which means fruit of the wise men. Go figure. I decided I would bring in banana bread every Monday, something for the kids to look forward to at the beginning of the week. I added a few sprinkles of cinnamon to the second batch, but the batter still didn't taste right to me. I figured a few strands of my banana-infused hair might do the trick. So I chopped off a few stragglers from the back of my neck and sautéed them in some olive oil. The batter had a slight punch after that. Definitely an improvement. I met with Principal Dole the next morning. I felt a little ridiculous going to a meeting in a neon yellow Jerry Garcia, but he didn't seem to mind.
You know, Mr. Johnson, I've received a lot of positive feedback about your whole fruit-themed initiative. Seems to really keep the kids focused.
Anything to improve those test scores, right?
Hey, if it works, it works. Keep it up, and you might find yourself tenured in a few years.
I'm just happy to get through to these kids, sir. It was almost June, and the mosquitoes were starting to come out. Turns out, banana peels are a good cure for the bites. I asked anyone in class if they wanted to volunteer. Jimmy had a big, nasty bite on his arm, and he wiped the peel all over his arms in front of the class. On his face, too. How does that feel, Jimmy?
Really cool, Mr. Banana!
Anyone else want to give it a try? Everyone in the class raised their hand. When I got home, I turned on a documentary about corruption in Chiquita Brands International. Apparently they brought cocaine to Borneo on some of their ships. Treated the plantation workers like shit, too. I thought it would be nice to write a letter to the company about my initiative. Figured they might like to know that their product was more than just a topping for oatmeal. I spent the whole night writing, and it turned into a few thousand words about my theories on elementary education. I didn't really think much of it, but I sent it with the subject, "Bananas are more than just food," to info@chiquitainternational.com. It would probably be lost among all the shit from angry customers anyway. It didn't cross my mind again until that weekend, when I got a phone call on the treadmill at Planet Fitness. "Mr. Johnson? This is Sophie from the Star Ledger. Just got an email from someone at Chiquita. Do you have a few minutes for an interview?" Yeah, of course." I was on the cover that week. It was a photo of me, dressed in full yellow, pointing above the camera in the foreground with all the gape-mouthed students behind me. Mr. Banana peels away the doubters. The local CBS station stopped by the school for a segment, too. I watched my segment that Sunday, a few minutes of my awkward teaching voice, intercepted with interviews from me, Principal Dole, and a few parents. Apparently some other elementary school teachers were starting to do it too. Mrs. Strawberry, Mr. Blueberry. I wondered if anyone else was doing the banana too. Once the special was over, I went to work on my third batch of banana bread. I sprinkled the cinnamon, sautéed some of my neck hair, but the batter still tasted a little flat to me. I looked down at my hands. It occurred to me that my skin was starting to turn a little yellow, probably from all the bananas I'd been eating. I wondered if my skin had any of that flavor too. I grabbed the tweezers and plucked a thin piece from the tip of my thumb. It was a little salty, but definitely had a fruity taste to it. I figured I'd try it out in the batter, so I took a bowl and plucked some skin off all 10 of my fingers. Then I mixed it in. Tasted great. That morning, people actually recognized me in the streets. All those Princeton kids must watch the news. I couldn't make it more than a few steps down Washington without being stopped for a selfie or a congratulatory handshake. It was nice, actually. I never thought wearing silly clothes would make people like me so much. I threw up in the trash can when I walked into the classroom. Figured I'd been eating too much potassium. It was pure yellow, of course. That bright bile and banana mixture must have been churning in my stomach for days. I was there early, just so I wouldn't have to engage in that jealous, snarky small talk with the other teachers. "So, you're some sort of teaching genius, huh?" I wrote the banana fact of the day on the blackboard, then rubbed out a quick one in the bathroom across the hall. I handed out the rations of banana bread after the Pledge of Allegiance. I wondered if the kids would still eat it if they knew they were eating a piece of me. Figured I should keep it a secret for the time being. Plus, it was my best batch yet. They didn't need to know how it was made. That night, I got another email from Mrs. Goldman. "Good evening, Mr. Johnson. Congrats on your 15 minutes. Alice just loves the idea that her teacher is famous. We really appreciate all of your effort, especially baking for the kids every week. Just a heads up, Alice found a hair in her banana bread this evening. Make sure you're keeping things clean at home. We don't want her to get sick and miss out on class. Mrs. Goldman." I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Still dressed in my work clothes, it occurred to me that I was really starting to look like a banana. I gelled the top of my hair into a curved, pointed stem and turned sideways, arching my back. For a second there, my face in the mirror disappeared. I was perfectly smooth, perfectly curved, perfectly ripe. I almost cried thinking about changing into my pajamas. Instead of a delicious yellowish pulp, I was just a freckled, overweight sack of blood and bones. I peeled off my clothes and walked into the kitchen. Just to make sure, I took a kitchen knife and made a small incision on my forearm. The blood immediately oozed out, and dark purple sludge began to drip onto the floor. I sliced the other arm to the same result, then sat down, watching the blood sputter angrily onto my thighs. I woke up a few hours later, shivering, caked in a brown metallic crust. I ate some breakfast, took a shower, then put on my full yellow outfit, figured I should wear long sleeves for the next few days. On Friday, the students performed a little play about Appomattox Courthouse. Sitting in the back of the classroom, I wiped my eyes and typed an inquiry into Google. Did the Confederate soldiers eat bananas? I spent the weekend at home, lights off, watching the same episode of Sesame Street on repeat. Big Bird yanking on the desk, the nails screeching from the force. "You said it was mine! You said it was mine!" On Sunday night, I chopped off my left pinky and fried it in the skillet. I sliced it into tiny pieces and mixed it into the batter. The banana bread came out darker than usual, a little savory, but still delicious. I wrapped up my left hand in gauze and went to bed. I woke up late the next morning, only had a few minutes to get ready. I slid into an Average Joe's t-shirt and a pair of yellow khakis, stuffed the banana bread into my backpack, and walked out the door. The kids stared at me warily as they walked into the classroom. Once they sat down, Jimmy raised his hand. "Yes?"
Mr. Banana, what happened to your hand?
Oh, this? Just a little accident, nothing to worry about." I held up my hand for the whole class to see.
Were you climbing a tree?
"No, Jimmy, just an accident in the kitchen."
What are those scratches on your arms?
I looked down. My forearms were crusty with blood. Must have opened up the cuts again, somehow. I hadn't showered in days. "Don't worry, kids. Let me run to the bathroom and clean up." I rushed out of the classroom into the bathroom across the hall. I took the gauze off my left hand, and then I pounded my fist against the hand dryer until every bone shattered. I woke up to the sound of a faint whisper behind me. I stood up and turned around. It was a banana. Slightly bruised, but a beautiful shade of yellow, with sharp lines protruding from the stem. He turned sideways, revealing his perfect curvature, and flashed a big smile. I walked towards him, closer and closer, until my nose was inches from the glass. Then he reached up and grabbed the top of his stem, stretching it sharply to one side. Slowly he pulled it apart, revealing that incredible white flesh inside, radiating, breathing, beautiful. So I did the same, dragging my fingernails down my scalp, carving into my bones. The fresh, airy pulp coated my forearms, and clumps of yellow shrapnel fluttered to my feet. And then I was naked for the first time, staring into my own eyes, my own flesh, panting, finally believing that I was something more. I pressed my lips against the glass. A cool breeze rushed to my core, and then I was gone. The pretty thing you see laying in my bed is not me. My parents can't tell the difference, though. She looks identical to me, all blonde hair and blue eyes. She even speaks the same way I do. It's been like this for a week now. I've tried everything, from moving objects around the house to screaming at the top of my lungs. I try to tell them what happened, but they can't hear me. I want them to know it's not me and my body, but someone else. Something else. Will you tell them for me? It happened just like this. I was walking home from school one day. We live in a very nice neighborhood where everybody knows everybody. Like most people in the neighborhood, my parents wouldn't be home for at least another 30 minutes to an hour due to their jobs. I keep my house key in my back pocket for easy access to unlock the door, thankful that my parents trusted me enough to walk home alone. Well, I'm not really alone. My friends who live in the same neighborhood walk with me. The only time I'm actually alone is for the last 5 or 6 minutes of my walk. On this particular day, it was just me and one of my friends walking home. We had just watched our friend wave goodbye to us and walk into his house when a white work-like van pulled up beside us. It looked like the kind of van cable companies used, except it was unmarked. No name of the company, no sticker asking how they were driving, nothing. I found it kind of odd, but didn't think much of it. The window closest to us rolled down to reveal a middle-aged white male. He was wearing something akin to a work uniform, but again, there was no company name or image I can identify.
"Hey girls."
He said, seeming friendly. "Hello," I said. My friend, Ashley, said nothing. He leaned forward before he spoke again. I could see he had dark brown hair and haunting gray eyes as he looked at us both. He seemed like a pretty normal guy.
"Do you know where I can find this address?"
He rattled off a street name and number. Yeah, it's right up that way on your right," I answered, pointing in the direction that he just came from.
"All right. Thank you, girls,"
he said, giving me one last glance that covered me from head to toe. He drove off in the opposite direction. "Where's he going?" Ashley asked. "Maybe he's going to turn around." "Didn't you think that was creepy, the way he looked at you?" "No." In truth, I did think it was a little creepy. I was used to the way guys looked at me, though. Despite being 15, I could pass for being older. I have been told that I look and act much more mature than my age. Ashley just sighed and we continued walking down the street. After another 10 minutes or so, I had finally made it home. I had found it odd that I hadn't seen the van again, making me doubt that he turned around at the end of the street. I entered my home and locked the door behind me, per my parents' request. I sat down in the kitchen and started my homework at the table. The way that my house is set up is that right when you walk into the door, you are greeted with the stairs. To the right of the stairs there's a coat rack, and to the left of the stairs is the living room, which has very tall windows. Just past the living room is the kitchen, which has sliding glass doors that lead to the backyard. The first floor is very open, spacey even. You are able to see straight to the backyard from the front porch and vice versa. The rest of the day went by normally. My parents came home, we ate dinner, and watched a movie before we all decided to go to bed. As I lay in my bed, I heard a light knock on the door. I got up and opened my door. It was about 11:30 at night and my parents' bedroom door was closed, so I assumed that they hadn't heard it. My room was at the top of the stairs, and I was able to see the shadow of someone on the porch through my windows. I had heard the light knock on the door again. I went downstairs and tried to peer through the living room window to try and see who it was without them seeing me. It really struck me as odd that someone was at our house this late. When I peered out, I saw the man from earlier, and this time a woman was with him. He was still wearing the uniform-like outfit from earlier, and the woman looked to be homeless. The skirt and top she wore were dirty and tattered at the end. Her messy light brown hair was pulled back into a ponytail to show her wrinkled face. I had a strange feeling come over me. I had seen this woman before, but I couldn't place it. At the moment, she saw me and smiled. I opened the door despite my gut telling me not to. It was stupid, I know, but I felt as though it would be rude if I didn't open the door, since she saw me. "Hello, honey," she crooned. She sounded far older than she looked, and since she already looked old, that seemed impossible. The guy just gave me a half smile. Can I help you all with something?" I asked quietly. I didn't want to wake my parents.
"Yes, you can,"
the guy said as he reached for my arm. I yelped as his firm grip pulled me closer to him and he covered my mouth to keep me silenced. I struggled as he pulled me towards his van that I hadn't noticed parked on the street a house down from mine. The old woman closed the door quietly behind me as to not disturb my parents. I tried screaming several times, but the man's hand held my mouth closed to the point that it hurt. The old woman then proceeded to open the van door once we got to it. The guy climbed into the back of the van with me, and she closed the door and got into the front. The back of the van was dark, and he pulled a bag over my head and tied my wrists behind my back. I could feel the tears streaming down my face as I prayed that he wouldn't hurt me. I felt a pinprick in the back of my arm, and after a minute or two, my eyelids started to feel heavy. I tried to fight it, but failed. I woke up tied to a table of sorts in the middle of a warehouse. The sun was starting to peek through the windows at the top of the warehouse. How long had I been out? Surely my parents had noticed that I was gone, right? Groggily, I lifted my head up and looked around. The rope from earlier was replaced with leather restraints. I noticed that there were several other people standing around me, and then an old woman was strapped to a table similar to the one I was on. She looked like she could be 100 years old. She looked at me blankly. Her eyes were dead and cold. She seemed unnervingly calm. I struggled to get out of the restraints.
Hush, hush, dear.
I turned to look at the woman beside my head. She smoothed my hair down and I let out a whimper.
We don't want to mess up your pretty hair now, do we?
One of the people stepped up and started strapping my head to the table so I couldn't move it. Tears streamed down my cheeks.
You must understand why we do this,
she said, her eyes growing darker.
We need to live.
What do you mean you need to live? I asked. My mouth still ached from the man holding it closed. Who are you people?
We are what you fear most. The monsters living under your beds, in your closets. We are people just like you. We live much like you. The only thing we don't have is bodies, which is both a blessing and a curse.
I turned to look over at the old woman on the table, and the woman continued to talk.
The only thing different between you and me is that we're immortal. You've seen us out of the corner of your eyes. Dark shadows that resemble people, or maybe flickers of light that seem out of place.
The people stepped back as the old woman on the table started convulsing. A pillar of white smoke slowly rose out of her mouth and nose and made its way over to me. I struggled even harder against the restraints. The old woman's body went limp. Her dead eyes glazed over. It's an image I will never forget.
We need your body. We want your body.
This is the last thing I hear the woman say. The pillar of smoke entered my body as I screamed. I got the sensation of drowning in chlorine-tainted water, and everything went black. The next time I opened my eyes, I was back in my room, but something was different. I was laying in my bed, and I hoped that this was all just a bad dream. I rolled over to find my body staring back at me, with not blue eyes, but a very light green. I, or should I say my body, smiled at me with a perfect set of teeth. I jumped out of bed and looked at my hands. They looked normal. I ran out of my room into the kitchen to find my mother standing there making breakfast. She called my name. "I'm right here, Mom." She called my name again after a few seconds. "I'm right here!" I yelled. She gave no indication that she heard me. If you're reading this, let my parents know that I am now one of the things that live under your bed, and I want them to know the truth.